This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
Where did Yeshua's name come from? Modern Christianity would have us believe that it is unique, but it actually comes from the Torah. Keith Johnson explains how Yeshua's name was politicized over the centuries to completely disassociate it from the language, history, and context of the Old Testament. Because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live.
As they take this message out into the world.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. When you were a kid in Sunday school, I wonder if you were taught the same thing that I was. When Mary was told to name her baby, it was the first time that the name Jesus had ever been used. Well, turns out that's not right. And Keith Johnson is going to set the record straight tonight because it's the Sabbath. In fact, it's the fourth Sabbath on the 9th month on the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. There you have it right there. And to make sure I'm not lonely up here, please welcome my co-hosts, Tiffany Panaccio and Keith Johnson.
Good to be here, my friend.
I had to pause on Panaccio. That's right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. See, Tiffany, you got to know about Tiffany a little bit here. So Tiffany came to us, how many years ago?
4.5.
4.5 years ago.
Maybe,
Yeah, okay. And then later on, there was this young fellow named Albert who started working with us. Mm-hmm. And now your last name is Albert's last name.
Yes, it is.
And that was just this last summer. So
yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, very wonderful. Yeah, Albert and Tiffany, wonderful couple.
Yes.
And Keith, you are starting something new this week. Actually, continuing something from last
I
week,
got to
right?
tell you something. Everything changes. I'm sitting here with you, and all of a sudden, something falls from the ceiling. And I said it was manna. Did I not say something was manna?
Yes, you did.
And all of a sudden, the door opens, and here comes manna. Michael Rood himself walks through the door, and I am so absolutely excited that he is here with us because I'm telling you, something's happening in December that's so important. One, we have a chance to continue to teach. And the first time I ever learned about Yeshua was in Michael's apartment in Israel 20 years ago. And now here we are at Shabbat Night Live talking about why not Jesus? But the second thing, which is as important, is it's the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And we get a chance to support A Rood Awakening in a way that can fundamentally change the reach that he has always told us it's about the gospel of the kingdom. Mm-hmm. We get a chance to do that. And so I hope that we can really make it clear that this month is key to supporting A Rood Awakening.
Well, it is because, you know, as the world starts crumbling and we see all these things on the news and alternative news that, oh no, it's just, oh, well, you might as well just give up now because there's just no hope and here we go. We're just, you know, it's a funny thing. When that starts to happen, God says, oh no, I'm going to turn that around for any ministry that's following me because we're going to ramp things up instead.
Yes.
And so that's what we're doing. Yeah. We have a whole bunch of new shows planned. There's one called The Biblical View that involves you, Keith, as well. We're hoping to get Tiffany do some teachings here as well, right? And so we're doing all kinds of new things here. But we can't do new things without having funding, right? And so that's why we have things like the Love Gift here in front of us, which we can do every month. And there's a commercial you can watch after this about all this. So we're not going to talk about that right now. But the end of the year is really important because, you know, what happens at December 31st? Well, you know, that's where things stop as far as taxes go, right? So if you have a business or if you personal, and you're like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Well, it's a really easy question. Do you want to give it to Biden and friends? Or do you want to give it to a ministry that can actually do something good with it and actually promote the gospel like you've been saying and just take it to a place we have not gone before? So that's what we want to do. And so we can only do that through your donations. That's why we do the Love Gift. That's why we have products in the store. That's why we do the Mission Monday thing we did a few weeks ago. It's because that's the way we fund things here, and ministry just costs money. I'm sorry, guys, it just does. And so we depend on you to help us do that. So we're just asking if you would consider an extra donation, or maybe you've been saving up all year for this time of year. Thank you in advance. We need your support, and that's how we continue to do things through 2023 and do new things.
I want to say also, one of the things that I don't think people really realize is what it takes even to get the free information to people. So one of the things that I did in the spirit of ARA is I went to Saudi Arabia, I climbed the mountain, and I brought you all with me. And every Sunday at 1 o'clock, we're actually bringing them along where they can see that. But again, we have so much that's going on around the world that's free, but free doesn't mean it doesn't cost ARA.
Right.
It costs ARA, and I want people to get on board with doing what we can do to support A Rude Awakening for what we are doing and what will happen in the future.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
And it's to change lives, right?
Yes.
And so all of our lives have been changed up at the frontier. You just mentioned how you met Michael 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20.
And, we talk about in the series about how my life changed, so people can watch the series to do that. But Tiffany, you're not in the series, so we need to ask you now.
Yeah.
You mentioned last week that, so you have a Catholic father, Seventh Adventist mom.
Yes.
And then, so you weren't really raised so you guys didn't really go to church or when you were a kid?
Not as much.
Okay.
No.
So at some point, like we were talking about here with the Christ controversy and with the series that we've already started is, why not Jesus? So when did that come about for you, that it wasn't Jesus? What's this Yeshua thing all about?
It's really interesting. So as I began my walk and I was searching for more truth, and a core memory was unlocked, as they say, because I actually went to school in Long Island, New York, and it is very Jewish there. And I remember a nice Jewish boy. His name was Adam. And we were in physics, I remember, and he goes over to our table and some religious discussion was going on. And he goes, his name is not even Jesus, it's Yeshua.
This Jewish kid told you
Jewish
this?
boy. And that memory was unlocked later on as I realized that his name was Yeshua and that there was a meaning to that word.
Amen.
And I remembered, I was like, wow, Adam knew that. It was so funny because it was.
So this is in school in Long Island. Now, forgive me,
Yeah.
did you say high school? Was it college?
High school. That was in high school. Or it could have been in middle school even. I went to school with the same people from
And did things start changing
age.
for you then, or you just kind of went, that's interesting, and move on?
Yeah, it was kind of stored in my memory,
Okay.
my long-term memory there, and I realized it probably 10 years, 20 years later.
10 years later, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how does that blossom? Because I know you came here on a tour,
Yes, I did.
and that's how you ended up being here with us. So you were interested in things of this nature before then.
Yes.
So when did that all turn around
So
for you?
that was around when I was 22, 23 years old. I started learning more. I realized I was going to church, I was doing Bible study, and really questioning the things that I was being taught. I was looking for the movement of the Ruach.
Amen.
Then as the Holy Spirit, I didn't see it as much where I was going. And I just wanted to know more and digging deeper. And I'm so thankful that I had a friend, my cousin, to do that with me, and he was the one who introduced me to Michael Rood. So.
Is this your cousin Darian?
No, it's actually my
another
cousin Hector. Yeah,
okay.
So my cousin Hector used to send me videos, and I was like, "Who is this man with this beard?" And I was watching his videos, and then I moved to the Charlotte area, and y'all put out an invitation to come for a tour. And I was like, well, I'm coming.
Well, we're glad you're here. And we're glad
Yeah.
Keith's here as well. And so, Keith, we're going to get started with your teaching in just a second here.
Well, I just want to say, Scott, this is combined with health. 10 years ago, Michael was the one that introduced me to Vitamix. 10 years later, you're introducing me to the inside, checking the blood, and it's all working together to be healthy. We're going to have to be healthy if we're going to go into this next year. So I want to make sure that people know that they understand that. It's going to take an inside-out commitment.
Well, I am honored to help you, my friend.
Yeah,
so
you're doing a great job.
Hopefully we can help lots of other people too.
Right.
So, all right. Okay, so Yeshua's name was politicized over the centuries to completely disassociate it from the language, history, and context of the Old Testament. Why? Well, we're going to find out why, and that's done with Keith Johnson. It's the second episode of Why Not Jesus? And we also have this for you from Keith Johnson. Take a look.
Where do we get the name Christ from? And does the definition of the word suggest that there are other Christs than Yeshua?
In English, he is the Christ. In Greek, Christos. And in Hebrew, Messiah. We should know there's a connection between English Christ, Greek Christos, and Hebrew Mashiach, which is then in English, Messiah.
The Christ Controversy with Keith Johnson takes us on a journey over thousands of years to explore the intriguing history of priests, prophets, kings, queens, and the mysterious ceremony of anointing. The Christ Controversy with Keith Johnson is our gift to thank you for supporting A Rude Awakening International. When you donate $50 to this ministry in December, we'll send you The Christ Controversy with Keith Johnson on DVD or Blu-ray. Donate $100 and we'll send you 2 gifts. The Christ Controversy with Keith Johnson, plus a custom license plate exclusive to A Rude Awakening International, bearing the Hebrew name of Yehovah. Donate $300 and we'll send you 3 gifts. The Christ Controversy, the Name of Yehovah license plate, and this 3D glass artwork featuring an image of the Second Temple, complete with a wooden base inscribed with Habakkuk 2:20. These gifts are a limited time offer from Michael Rood to thank you for your support. Make your donation today and receive the $50 gift, the $100 gift, or the $300 gift. Get these exclusive thank you gifts when you make a donation to support A Rude Awakening International in December. Call 888-766-3610 or get your gifts online with a donation at monthlylovegift.com. The Chronological Gospels Bible is changing lives all over the world, putting everything the Messiah did in exact chronological order and explaining the behind-the-scenes truth of what the Messiah did, when he did it, and why. The timing of it all means everything. And now, the Chronological Gospels can be easier on your eyes. The larger print edition features 40% larger type, and every page appears exactly the same as the original, so you can follow along with others who have the regular size version. The Chronological Gospels larger print edition also has wider margins to write notes, and the premium quality paper means you can highlight without soaking through. Plus, the larger print edition lies flat, so you can teach without having to hold the book open. The Chronological Gospels larger print edition is a big and beautiful coffee table book, measuring a full 12 inches tall and 9 inches wide. Study the Bible with clarity and ease.
I love the size of this book. This is 9 by 12. The paper is perfect because it doesn't bleed through when I write on it. I can mark it up, and I always make notes in all my Bibles. Everything is the same place as it is on the smaller version, and I can just stand back and I can teach from it, and it's the perfect size. I pray thee, of whom speaks this prophet?
Order the Chronological Gospels larger print edition by phone or online. You'll get 40% larger type than the original. Call 800-788-7887. That's 800-788-7887. Or get the Chronological Gospels Bible larger print edition online at aroodawakening.tv/large.
Some of the traditions in modern day Judaism are what Yeshua said are takanot, laws which change biblical law, which are forbidden. And Yeshua said, don't do them. But other traditions are remembrances of good things in the past, and they are a shadow picture of good things to happen in the future. On the Sabbath, we take 2 challah loaves, 2 loaves of bread. This represents the manna, the double portion that we received on the 6th day. This was God's provision for us. And this is what it continues to mean to us today. When Yeshua, just before his crucifixion, the night before his crucifixion, at the Last Supper that he had with his disciples, he took bread and he blessed, not the bread, he blessed the Most High. And he said, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And he broke the bread and he said, this is my body, which is broken for you. As often as you do this, remember this. By his stripes, we were healed. And then he took the cup And he said, in the prayer of Melchizedek to Abraham, Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua said, this, what you have been doing for 1,000 years from the time of Abraham, this represents the renewed covenant in my blood. This is how I will pay for the broken covenant. I will pay the death penalty and do this until I come.
Well, if you joined us for our last episode, you heard about my Jesus journey and Keith Johnson's Jesus journey. And maybe you thought about your own Jesus journey when first you started to realize that Jesus was not his name. But now we're going to find out with Keith Johnson, perhaps, is Jesus the answer?
You know, Scott, I was thinking, this happened just at the time, and I was brought back when I had my Bible. I was just brought back to one of the first songs they taught me. Jesus is the answer for the world today. Do you know that?
Yeah, I've heard that one.
There's no other. Jesus is the way. Some of them is powerful songs. And so I asked myself the question, is Jesus, J-E-S-U-S, the answer? So I want us to do a quick little exercise. I want you to act like you're a Sunday school teacher.
Okay.
You're a Sunday school teacher in a Baptist church that's slashed kind of like a Mennonite, all right? You're the Sunday school teacher, and I'm going to, and I'm sorry, let me do it this way. I'm the Sunday school teacher.
Okay.
No, let's figure out. I tell you what, let's just do it. Ready?
Okay, all right. Now, you have not prepared me for this at all.
Absolutely
so this may get
not.
a little messy.
No, hey, folks, I'm throwing him under the bus. Are you ready? Okay, ready? You're the Sunday school teacher. So you're the Sunday school teacher. I come and I talk to you. I say, who was born in a manger?
Well, Jesus was born in a manger.
Okay. Who turned water into wine?
Jesus.
Who walked on the water?
Jesus walked on the water.
Who healed the blind man?
Jesus.
Who raised Lazarus from the dead?
That was Jesus.
Who loves you?
Jesus loves you.
Who was Jesus named after?
Okay, now.
What does the name Jesus mean?
It's supposed to mean salvation, or so we're told.
Okay, so I think there's a lot of Sunday school teachers who are teaching little children, and they have the candy, and they say to the kids, they say, who was born in the manger? And the kids say, Jesus. Who turned water into wine? The kids say, Jesus. Who walked on the water? And the kids say, Jesus. And they ask, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. If the Sunday school teacher says, who was Jesus named after, the poor little kids' faces would change. And the candy would stop flowing. Because we don't teach children these two questions. The answer to these two questions. Who was Jesus named after?
Okay.
What does the name Jesus mean? Now, to my lovely wife, I love when she lets me use this lock. I have used this lock a couple times here at A Rude Awakening. One of the times I used this lock is for a series we did that is also on the A Rude Awakening app called the Jonah series. Deep dive into the book of Jonah.
Oh, yes, yeah.
We use this lock. And by the way, Stephanie has done an amazing job editing that. The audio king, Kenny, steps in and does the audio. You guys as team, just amazing. But I will tell you something. The two questions are like these two keys. The first key, who was Jesus named after? If you understand the answer to that, you can begin to unlock this. And what's the lock? It's the Jesus lock. See, they've got us locked up with this name Jesus because we don't understand these two answers to these two questions. Who was Jesus named after? What does the name Jesus mean? Now, here's my goal. My goal is to take the information from the back of this book, what about the name Jesus, and expand it.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael, for inspiring me. I'll tell you, I've had some trepidation, but we're going to expand that information. How are we going to answer these two questions? With language, history, and context. So, Scott, I'm going to need your help. Who was Jesus named after? Now, let me just say this. Also, before we answer this, we've got to at least give some basic information to people. If we've got the Hebrew Tanakh, that's the Hebrew scriptures, which were in about 200 BC or so, were translated into Greek. That's the Greek Septuagint of the Tanakh. And some of those that are listening, of the Old Testament, which I don't agree that it's called the Old Testament, but that's what they know. So you got the Hebrew Bible translated into Greek in the Septuagint. You also have some witness of the Hebrew New Testament. Again, we have the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, thanks to Michael and Nehemiah. Michael asking an important question, Nehemiah doing the research. There are 28 manuscripts of the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, which are now available, and we're using all those manuscripts in the Hebrew Gospel prose, which is great. We also have the Greek New Testament. Now, in my experience at seminary, I happened to go to a seminary where they gave us a year or so of Hebrew, but about 2.5 years of Greek. Everything you can imagine on Greek. What most people don't realize, we have 28 manuscripts of the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, but when it comes to the Greek New Testament, there are now, as of today, fragments and manuscripts of about 5,700. None of them, say it, none of them are exactly the same. So they do text criticism. In fact, there's a guy in I think 1700s or so who decided to take 100 Greek manuscripts and do text criticism to try to come up with the Greek New Testament. Using just 100 Greek manuscripts, putting together the Greek New Testament, he had in his apparatus variants with just 100 manuscript, 30,000 variants.
Wow.
There are that many differences. Now, let me say this. Those variants don't always affect the meaning of the passage, but it's like words. You know, this is a spelling. Now, if you take 100 manuscripts and you get 30,000 variants, how many variants do we think there are with 5,000 manuscripts and fragments? A lot. From there, we also had the Latin Vulgate. This is our friend Jerome, who I loved learning about him when I was in Israel in Bethlehem. He went down into a cave and he came up with a Latin translation of the Greek Old Testament using Hebrew, and there's a number of things he did, but basically he came up with the Latin Vulgate, which was the Old and the New Testament in Latin. And when he did that, the church, the Roman Catholic Church, got so excited. They said, okay, we now have the scripture in our common tongue, which was Latin, back in 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1,000, all the way up until about 1,300. The Latin Vulgate was it. These guys come along and they start saying, listen, we think we should put this language of the Bible into the English language. So we're going to do something real quick. I'm going to give you a really quick rundown before we get into the nitty-gritty of what happened with our English New Testament, specifically pertaining to the name Jesus. Okay, so first one, Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. Can you go to Matthew chapter 1, verse 1? Perfect. Matthew 1, verse 1, and I hope people have their Bibles. This is the first time that we see the name Jesus in the New Testament.
Okay.
Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. And can you read that for us?
The genealogy, or a genealogy, of Jesus Christ.
Okay, and the first word there, if we were looking in the Greek New Testament, now I'm going to ask that somehow they'll be able to put this up for you guys because I have the spelling of it, would be pronounced Yesu. Okay, if you're looking at the Greek New Testament and you're having your English, and if they're looking at Greek, it would say Yesu.
Yesu.
Okay. The Latin Vulgate in chapter 1, verse 1 would be Yesu, capital I-E-S-U. Yesu. Again, so you have Yesu chapter 1, verse 1 in Greek. Fits perfectly. For Latin, they say we're going to say his name is Yesu. Great. Wycliffe in 1380 first translates into handwritten English. Here's what his spelling of Jesus' name would have been. The book of the generation of Yephu, and that's Y-H-E-F for us, but meant S then U. So again, he's still saying Yesu, but he's spelling it in Old English. Are you with me still?
Yep.
That's Old English. Tyndale, 1535. By the way, Wycliffe, when he decided that he wanted to do that, the church got extremely upset. What do you mean you want to take Latin? I guess we should stop for a second. Why was it so controversial that he would take Latin and bring it into English? I'll just ask you that question generally. Why would that make the church nervous?
Well, from what I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that they had control over the people to understand the Bible in their language, but if they gave it to everyone, well, that loosened their control.
Yeah, no, I think Michael probably does a really good job in this. I won't do the same as Michael, but I can see him slamming his hand down saying, you know what, they wanted to control him with the information. And that's exactly what they did. In Latin, you had the big hats, the preachers, the Pope, all of them saying, we've got this powerful thing, we're making money on this thing, you have to pay for burial, you have to pay for marriage, you have to pay for purgatory, and it's all in Latin. Now, if they put it in English, they're going to realize that information ain't in the English Bible. What we're using to control people will get out. We cannot let it go into English.
It'll wreck the narrative.
It'll wreck the narrative, and the money will stop. I mean, you got the popes building the Temple Vaticanus with money from people off of information that's not in the Bible. That's what was happening. Tyndale in 1535, here's how he spells it. This is the book of the generation of Yephus, Y-H-E-F-U, and there's an S. Now, again, I'm going to give this information to you all so you can put it up there. First Yesu, then Yesu Latin, then Yesu with Wycliffe, and then Tyndale adds an S. He adds an S. And then finally, we get with the Coverdale Bible. The Coverdale Bible in 1535, the first complete printed English Bible. And I got to show you this, Scott. This is so exciting. What he does there is they add Y-E-S-U-S. Now, I want to show you this next image. Here's the cover of the Coverdale Bible. Can you take a look at that? What do you see at the top of the page?
Oh, look at that.
Of the Coverdale Bible, the first English Bible printed Old and New Testament. What do you see there?
There's the Tetragrammaton.
Yud, Hey,
Vav, Hey.
Vav, Hey. Well, this is like 15, I don't know, whatever that, the date that I gave, let me just see here. The date that I gave, 1535. Okay, here's what I love. The King James Bible. It was not that King Henry VIII had a change of conscience regarding publishing the Bible in English. In other words, King Henry was saying to himself, now wait, should we put this into English? If we put it into English, how does that affect the power? Well, he had an agenda. He had something that he wanted to do, and there's a lot of information about this, but I want to read this. When we get to the 1611 King James Bible, it was not that King Henry VIII had a change of conscience regarding publishing the Bible in English. His motives were more sinister. But the Lord sometimes uses the evil intentions of men to bring about his glory. King Henry VIII had, in fact, requested that the Pope permit him to divorce his wife and marry his mistress. The Pope refused. King Henry responded by marrying his mistress anyway, later having 2 of his many wives executed, and thumbing his nose at the Pope by renouncing Roman Catholicism, taking England out from under Rome's religious control, and declaring himself as the reigning head of state and also to be the new head of the church. This new branch of the Christian church, neither Roman Catholic nor Protestant, became known as the Anglican Church of the Church of England. King Henry acted essentially as its pope. His first act was to further defy the wishes of Rome by funding the printing of the scriptures in English. The King James Bible is the first legal English Bible, just for spite. Let's show the front cover page of King James Bible. And again, what you'll see at the top is Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. It's almost as if there's a witness to the Hebrew scriptures. You know, it's like it's there. And when we get into the King James Bible, now let me just stop. I am so excited. I called Nehemiah Gordon, Dr. Nehemiah Gordon, by the way. I said, Nehemiah, listen, I want to go a little bit further. When we did the Name of God Pure and Simple, you and I used my grandmother's Bible, which is the 1901 version of the King James Bible.
I remember that.
I love that Bible. I never knew about it as a kid, but again, we used that to compare and contrast. I said, Nehemiah, I need the 1611 version. Like, I really need that, high quality. I'll get back to you, he says. Gives me a call. Here's where you can get it. Takes me to the site. People can see it. We're going to use images, Scott, from the 1611 King James Bible as we go through the process on this issue of Jesus. What does it say in the King James Bible? Now I want to show folks Matthew chapter 1, verse 1 in the Old English of the King James Bible, the book of the generation of, say that word.
Jephus, as it would be pronounced with our current letters.
Yeah, actually that's Jesus.
Jesus.
in Old English. That's how they would have pronounced it. It looks like a J, it's actually a capital I. But I mean, they say it as a capital I, Jesus. And so that is now King James Version 1611. Now, how did we get to that? That's what we're going to get into right now. Who was Jesus named after? Now, I want you to take your Bible and go to Numbers chapter 13, verse 16. Numbers chapter 13, verse 16.
13, 16. All righty.
Numbers 13, 16.
Says, these were the names of the men whom Moses sent to make reconnaissance of the land. Then Moses gave to Hoshea, son of Nun, the name of Joshua.
Excellent. Numbers 13, 16 is the beginning to ask the question, who was Jesus named after? We have to go to the Tanakh, the big book, to see this. Now, we're going to see how we get there. Deuteronomy chapter 3:21 and Judges chapter 2:7. You don't have to read it right now, but in Judges chapter 2:7, the spelling of his name is actually spelled different. 2 different times, spelled differently in one verse. One time it is Yud, He, Vav, Shin with a different vowel under the Shin. A second time it is Yud, He, Vav, Shin with another Vav. It's the same issue of the vowel, but it's spelled sort of in its full spelling. That's Numbers 13, 16. What I want to take a look at is I want to take a look at that verse, Numbers 13, 16, in the old King James Bible. Therefore, the names of the men, which Moses is, we say F for us, but it's Moses, the F is an S, sent out to spy out the land. And Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Yehoshua. That is what it says in 16:11 of Numbers 13:16. Again, read your verse. Keep this up real quick. Read your verse in Numbers 13:16, and what does it say?
It said, then Moses gave to Hoshea, son of Nun, the name of Joshua.
Joshua. This begins the process. Okay, let's do this. Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 17. Would you go to Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 17? And this is going to be the second part of it, because what people will ask is they'll say, okay, you have Numbers where Moses is actually giving the name to Joshua, changing his name, as I should say, from Hoshea to Joshua. And then we have Nehemiah chapter 8, 17. In fact, I'm just going to read that for us if it's okay, Scott.
Please do.
The entire assembly of those who had returned from the captivity made booths and lived in them. This is going to be so important. The sons of Israel had indeed not done so from the days of, and then in English, most Bibles will say, Joshua, the son of Nun. The same English name, Joshua. However, if we look at the Hebrew, and again, I'm going to have us put this up on the screen just so we see it. Instead of Joshua, the son of Nun, which is the longer spelling of Joshua, it actually says Yeshua, son of Nun. Now, that is a shortened form of the Hebrew word that you saw in Numbers 13. It's a shortened, it's almost like Christopher and Chris, Jonathan and John. In Second Temple times, there were many longer names that were shortened. This is a great example of one. That in the Tanakh, Yehoshua, by the time we're talking about the same person, his name is Yeshua. You got that, right?
Interesting.
Now, let's go to the King James Version. Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 17. I love this. And all the congregation of them that were come again of the captivity made booths, and under the booths for thence the days of, and here is the spelling right now, Yeshua. Look at that. Right there, with it's Yeshua, the son of Nun. But if you look in most English Bibles, they're going to say Joshua. I bet you almost for sure that if or they might say Jeshua. I don't know. Do you have Nehemiah?
Yeah, I had trouble finding it. So Nehemiah 8:17.
Yes.
So the whole assembly who had all returned from captivity put up shelters and lived in them. The sons of Israel had never done such a thing in the days of Joshua, son of Nun.
Now there again, they're using the same English word in Nehemiah chapter 8:17 as the word they used in Numbers chapter 13. However, in Hebrew, There's the longer form, Yehoshua, and Yeshua. Both of them translated by English as Joshua. Now, I wish it stopped there, but it doesn't. Let's continue just to one more verse. Here's what I'd like to say real quickly. 29 times Yeshua is always translated as Jeshua in most English Bibles, except when referring to Joshua, the son of Nun. In other words, normally, when they see Yeshua, English translations say Jeshua. If I want to challenge people that are watching to look in their English Bibles, here are a couple verses they can check real quick. We've got a few seconds. 2 Chronicles 31:15, Ezra chapter 2, verse 2, Nehemiah chapter 3:19. When we're at the break, I want people to take a look at those verses, 2 Chronicles 31:15, Ezra 2:2, and Nehemiah 3:19. And I almost guarantee you in their English Bibles, it's going to say Jeshua, except for in this verse where they call him Joshua. And again, two different spellings, one name.
Okay, very, very interesting stuff. Okay, so if you're enjoying this as much as I am, come back after the break. It's your donations that make this happen. Thank you very much for donating to make this show happen. We ask that you would continue that so that others can see this into the future. We'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and we will be right back. Well, if you're a history buff, you're certainly liking this episode. Before the break, we were talking about some older versions of the Bible and comparing Joshua and Jesus and everything in between, and we have more, Keith.
And I got into a bit of a rush, so I want to give people 2 Chronicles 31:15, and I'm looking at my original study Bible that I got as a new Christian. It's 31:15, and it says Eden, Minyamin, and Jeshua. Jeshua. Now, that is the same Hebrew word behind your English Joshua, which is Yeshua, but how they're translating it in my RSV is Jeshua. Let me go to Ezra chapter 2, verse 2. And they came with, let's see here, Ezra chapter 2, verse 2. They came with Zerubbabel and Jeshua. Would you read Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 19, and see if my theory is correct? This is the Jerusalem Bible. What do they say?
Next to him, Ezer, son of, there it is, Jeshua.
Jeshua. Now, again, I want to slow down. The English translators get a little nervous when you start talking about the New Testament Jesus and how the New Testament Jesus, it's who is he named after? We know according to Nehemiah chapter 13 that it is our English Joshua. Now we should ask a simple question. If we know that's the case, why don't we know Jesus today as Joshua? So I'd like you to go to, let's see here. Let me do something real quick. I just want people to see this real quick. This is what we see in the Hebrew, which is Yeshua, son of Nun, Yeshua ben Nun. Under the Greek Septuagint, we'd see Yesu, son of Nun, and in English, that has become Joshua, son of Nun. That's what I want to make sure that people understand that. Okay, now let's have some fun. If I'm checking my Septuagint, the Greek translation from Hebrew, and I answer this question, who is he named after? I'd go to Numbers chapter 13, 16. I would open up my Greek Septuagint, and under the name Joshua, behind the name Joshua in English, I would see Yesun. That is how they say it in Greek. A different ending at the end, which is a little nun sound. Now, if I go to Matthew chapter 121, this is where it gets fun.
Okay.
I want you to go to Matthew chapter 121, and let me see, which Bible should I use? Let's use my study Bible from my early Christian days where they gave me the big book. Matthew chapter 121. So we've established the fact that in Greek, which is the translation of Hebrew called the Septuagint, for the English name Joshua in Numbers 13, 16, the Greek is Yesun with a little nun at the end. Matthew chapter 121, read that if you would.
She, being Miriam, will give birth to a son, and you must name him Jesus, because he is the one who is to save his people from their sins.
Now, if I open up the Greek New Testament, behind the name Jesus in Matthew 1:21 in my Greek New Testament is spelled exactly the same as Numbers 13:16. Greek Tanakh, Old Testament, Greek New Testament, the names are spelled exactly the same in Greek. So there is no question that the Greek translators, when they get to the New Testament, are translating what we understand as Joshua, English, from the same word, which is Yeshua. Here's the issue, Scott, and this is what I don't know is in your book. When it says in Matthew chapter 121, Jesus, is there a note?
You should call his name Jesus because of save. Well, no, not after Jesus, but the word save has a note.
Okay, hold on. Don't go to that then.
Okay.
So let's do this.
Oh, actually there is. It refers to that. I'm sorry. Or does it?
Okay.
No, it does not.
Then do me a favor. I'd like you to go to Acts chapter 7, verse 45. Everyone is hanging in there with us. 7, verse 45.
Okay.
Now remember, we understand that the Greek Old Testament, quote unquote, is translating from the Hebrew Yeshua, and in the Greek New Testament, they've given Yeshua the same Greek name, Yesu. So now I want you to read Acts chapter 7, verses 45.
Okay. It was handed down from one ancestor of ours to another until Joshua brought it into the country he had conquered from the nations, which were driven out by God as we advance.
Excellent, excellent. Now, here's what I want people to understand. The New Testament has gone through a progression. If we go to, in fact, I think we're gonna do this. I think I have the 1611 version. So let me do it this way. I'm gonna read Hebrews chapter 4, verse 8. Go to Hebrews chapter 4, verse 8. You don't need to do it. I'll ask our audience to do that. In Hebrews chapter 4, verse 8, it says this, in my study Bible, for if Joshua had given them rest, God would not speak later of another day. These are more modern translations. What's really, really interesting is that if we go to the King James of 1611 or my grandmother's Bible of 1901, they don't do the trick. The trick is to make sure that you don't think Joshua when you say Jesus. Now, both of these verses are referring to the man we call Joshua, son of Nun. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to the King James Version of 1611, and I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Our 1611 King James Version, see if it will help us answer this question definitively. Acts 7:45, which also, let's take a look at it, which also our fathers that came after brought in with, look at the spelling of that name. Does that look familiar to you?
Mm-hmm.
Where does it look like? Doesn't that look the same?
That looks like Jesus, yeah.
It's exactly the same. So in the 1611, though my English says Joshua, in the New Testament, they put the word Jesus. Now, they're thinking it's consistent because the name is the same in the Old and the New. However, the modern translations are like, we don't want to confuse Scott, because Scott might realize that when he sees that verse, he might realize that Joshua and Jesus have the same name. Can I say that again? In English, if we were consistent, English translators would have called Joshua Jesus or Jesus Joshua. They had to make a decision. They both come from the same source. Joshua is Jesus, Jesus is Joshua. And what Acts 7:45 and Hebrews 4:8 is letting us know is that in the earlier translations, they went ahead and put the word Jesus. Later they said, somebody's going to make the connection. Someone's going to realize, wait a minute, Jesus is not a unique name. It's actually based on that big old book that we want nothing to do with. In the part of the book, especially those laws of Moses, we don't want nothing to do with that. We've got to separate him from language, history, and context. And so even the translators are playing tricks. But in 1611, they didn't do the trick. Hebrews 4:8. Let me show you here. Hebrews 4:8. There it is. For if, say it,
Jesus. Jesus. Yeah, Jesus.
Jesus. Then in other words, that's Jesus. Now, most people that are listening to us right now, and I'm challenging people, I'm asking people to have a Bible. I prefer that you have two, and you open your English Bible and you see how did they translate the exact same name. Did they change? And if so, why? Here's what we know. English Jesus was named after English Joshua. You got to be consistent. English Joshua is the same as English Jesus. Or Hebrew Yeshua was named after Hebrew Yehoshua. You can call it the shortened form or the longer form.
It's the same,
but it's
same name.
Exact the same.
Okay.
It's exactly the same. So here's what I want us to do, Scott. We've got to ask ourselves the question: why would there be a controversy with this name? Think about it. Why would there be controversy with the name Yeshua? Now, you have some background, you have some understanding of that name, and I think if I asked you the question, if you said, what does the note say for your Bible when you go to Matthew chapter 1:21?
Oh, it said, let's go back to that. Matthew 1:21 had said, here it is. All right. It said, okay, so it said Jesus, Hebrew, oh, it did say, okay, Hebrew Yehoshua.
Oh, does it say that in your...
right there. Yehoshua.
What?
Means Yahweh saves. Yeah.
Now, isn't that kind of funny? So no, say it one more time.
Okay, so Jesus, quote unquote, they have it here, literally, in quotation marks, Hebrew Yehoshua, in parentheses, means, quote unquote, Yahweh saves.
Okay. Now, in our next episode, we're going to get into this, but I forgot to show you a note. I want us to look at Hebrews chapter 4:8 one more time. Could you put Hebrews 4:8 up on the screen?
I'm going to look at that up here, too.
Hebrews 4:8. Now, while you're looking for Hebrews 4:8, I want folks to see on the screen this. For if Jesus, that's how it would be pronounced, though it looks different, it's the Yefus, so the F is the S, had given them rest, that shows you that the F is an S, that is rest, that is Jesus, rest, then he would not after have given, spoken F of another day. And again, that is Jesus. Look at the note in the 1611 of Hebrews chapter 4, verse 8. What does the note say over to the right there?
Joshua.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So here's what they're telling us. Hey guys, just in case So you're not confused. This one is Yoshua. So I want you to go to Hebrews chapter 4, verse 8 and see what yours says.
So there's no note, but it says, if Joshua had given them rest.
So there's no confusion there.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Now, we answered the first question, who was Jesus named after? Let me do the Sunday school thing again. So if I ask you the question, who was Jesus named after?
Now that I know, Joshua.
Absolutely. Is there any question about that?
No.
Joshua, in other words, the one that Moses, now then this gets so exciting. So Moses decides, when he sees Hoshea, he looks at him and he says, I'm going to need to change his name. And why did Moses say to Hoshea, he needs to change his name? What does the name Hoshea mean? There's something still significant. It's still dealing with the same root of the issue of salvation. Think about this. This is so exciting to me. Your Bible tells on itself. It's letting you know it's Yeho, but they say this is Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why isn't it Yahshua? Why is it Yeho? Because it's Yehovah. Moses decides, and this is what excites me, Moses looks at Joshua and says, man, he's got a big job. This guy, I'm telling you, this guy's my assistant. He's got a huge job. He's going to have to go fight. He's going to have to lead. He's going to have to be the one that goes to places that we call him to go. His name is not good enough. Hoshea, he saves? Nah. No description of where the salvation comes. The first person in history to receive a combined name of Yehovah and this powerful word to save, which we're going to talk about hopefully if we have time, is the man that Moses says, your name will no longer be salvation on its own, or save on its own, or he saves. I want no one in Israel to be confused. You're going to need to carry the name of the one that's going to do this. Joshua, can't call you Hoshea anymore. I need you to be Yehoshua. Now think about it. We should be so excited about that. Who was Jesus named after? He's named after the one, and my excitement is real. My excitement is, so the Father is up in heaven. Okay, I'm going to do this really radical thing. Going to send, maybe at a council meeting with all the angels. Hey guys, listen, going to have a man born on the 1st century. Going to do a radical thing. Gabriel, I'm going to need you to go and tell the father, the mother, Joseph and the mother, to give him this specific name. So the angels have a meeting. What name should we call him? He says, you know what? Let's call him Jesus. Nobody said that up in heaven. The Father said this, I need people, when they think of him, to think of me. I need people, when they hear his name, they know that I'm doing something so powerful, so amazing, so wonderful. Excuse my excitement. He says, I tell you what, Angel Gabriel, when you go down there, tell them to call him after me. Why don't we say Jesus Jr.? Listen, they should, look, what the English should have done. They should have just said Jesus Jr. Because at least then people would know, hey, he's connected to his father. We should do a whole series called the Junior Series.
The Junior Series, yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I think this is amazing. Moses calls him Yehovah will save. Yehovah says, the one that will be born in the 1st century will carry my name. He will be named after the man that Moses said, there's an amazing thing that's about to happen. What's the amazing thing? I'm going to take a people from bondage in Israel. I'm in Egypt, sorry. I'm going to take them out of bondage. I'm going to lead them across the desert. I'm going to bring them to the promised land, and I'm going to need somebody to lead them into the promised land and be the one that will continually remind them of what I do. I save. And that's the name, that's the person that he's named after. And again, back to what we talked about in the first episode, this whole Jesus movement doesn't make, when you see the commercial, he gets us. Nothing about the commercial makes me think about what I just said.
Right.
It makes me think there's a separate individual who's called Jesus who gets my situation. No matter what my situation is, excuse me, I get excited about this. No matter what my situation is, he gets us. So there's nothing about the Tanakh. There's nothing about the New Testament. There's nothing about every jot and tittle. There's nothing about if you love me, you'll keep my commands. It's all about whatever is happening in society. Jesus gets us. But what does Yahushua do? What does Yeshua do? What is he about? What is he called to? Why does he carry that name? Now, we're going to do the second question. And the second question is not only who was Jesus named after, the second question is what does his name mean? And Scott, I would say honestly that when we get to the second question, that's where we can really get into the meat of the matter. That when I said that Jesus allows us to separate him from language, history, and context, the junior thing, okay, we get that. But the meaning, you can't understand his ministry. You can't understand his message if you don't know how significant it was. Now, I got to tell you something so exciting. We actually have found, this is not too controversial, we've actually found, thanks to Michael and Nehemiah Gordon, we found the birth certificate. Get your family. Call your friends. Next week, we're gonna, I'm telling you, you know how there's like birth certificate, there's controversies and whose birth certificate's real? We found the birth certificate from Bethlehem. No, and I'm telling you, I got it. I'm gonna show it right here next week. I've got the birth certificate. And you think I'm kidding? I'm telling you. And it says in the birth certificate what his name is. Now, I found another, I tell you what, I probably shouldn't, I tell you what, we'll wait till next week to show this because I'm gonna have to bring it in here, and if you'll let me come back, if you let me come back, I'll bring it in here, we'll show it, and then we'll put it up on the big screen, and we'll explain in no uncertain terms, not only who is he named after, but what his name means. And when you understand that, it'll be hard for you. It's like you said, if we how did you say that? To separate ourselves from Jesus and the meaning? How did you put that together?
Well, it was sort of the opposite of what you said. So if we are being called as a culture to separate Jesus, we need to separate ourselves from that name and go back to his
that's
language.
That's so controversial, man. I don't know if they're going to let us back next week. But
well, this group will.
Yeah. I'm bringing the birth certificate next week.
All right, great. I can't wait to see it. Okay, so thank you, Keith, and thank you. Come back next week to see Yeshua's birth certificate, or Jesus' birth certificate. Well, we'll find out next week whose it is. Some guy. Anyway.
Right, somebody's birth certificate.
Somebody's birth certificate. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us. Until then, Shavua Tov. Have a great week.